Hi everyone, it's Carolyn from True Crime Chat with Mommy Ramblings, and I'm here with a video about some things in the case of Gabby Petito, and they relate to Brian Laundrie, the camping trips, the cell phones, etc. And I wanted to put it in its own video because I think it'll be relevant as this case progresses, and hopefully once Brian is captured and justice starts to happen, trial, etc., this will still be relevant, and I want to get this out there in its own video. So we know that from records there was a real record of the Laundries camping at that DeSoto campground. But there's a lot of information about the scheduling of one trip, canceling, rescheduling, and then 3 people checking in, 2 people checking out. The lawyer says that's not true. They all left at the same time. The FBI has the surveillance footage. As of today, the FBI just descended upon the house again and took samples from that camper. So that we'll discuss again in more depth tonight. We did a little bit of it this afternoon, but let's talk about these dates, the scheduling of them, and about phones right now. And what I think, looking at these facts, what may be going on here. If you're brand new to our channel, I urge you to click on the subscribe button in the lower corner of the video so you don't miss any of our uploads or live shows, and become part of the greatest community on YouTube. All right, let's get into this. So a little recap. Now, allegedly, Brian Laundrie left Gabby Petito alone at that Fairfield Inn in Utah from August 17th through August 23rd, when he flew back home to Northport, Florida, and was supposed to be there to empty a storage unit or units which allegedly contained their stuff that their father said, that Christopher Laundrie, Brian's father, said that they could empty the storage units and not pay that storage fee and move the stuff back into that Northport, Florida home. That is allegedly what occurred. Now, how do we know that? Well, we heard that in an interview, or read that in an interview that Gabby's mother gave. I've never seen it anywhere else. And I imagine, as we saw in the Daybell case, if this is true, that there should be video that could be procured from the self-storage, if their cameras are working and stuff, that would show Brian Laundrie, maybe his father, moving stuff in and out. There should also be a paper trail from that if they indeed did close out those storage units. Or did they move something else into those storage units? We don't know, and that's something that, you know, will be very interesting when that comes out. Of course, the FBI, I'm sure, is on that and has just not released that as yet, but we'll probably see that sometime soon. I mean, they released the Daybell one far before, we haven't even had a trial, but far before even evidentiary hearings. So let's talk about that. So we're going to look, I'm just going to put that down. We need that self-storage paper trail video to back up that trip back. And if we see Brian there, yes. If we don't see Brian there, then did he really fly back? That's another thing, right? Did he fly back? Because, as we've discussed in our other videos, we know if you have young children around this age in their early 20s, or that they want to be on their own and doing something, and let's say something happened and they fought and he walked away, would Gabby then maybe cover for Brian? Okay, say he went back to Florida. Very possible, very possible. So we don't know that that's true unless we see that paper trail and video. But right now, allegedly, he flew back, and then he was picked up from the airport on the 23rd, where he went back with Gabby to that Fairfield Inn, and we hear that there is a positive sighting of both Brian and Gabby checking out of the Fairfield Inn that morning, the 24th. Now the 24th, they leave. The 25th is when Gabby's mom says she last has a video call from Gabby last time, right? We know that there were 2 texts, 27th and 30th, but they're not even believed to be from Gabby based on their content. So let's go on. My slide doesn't want to advance here. Let's see. There we go. Meanwhile, back in Northport, we have Brian leaving the 23rd, right? Well, the next day on the 24th is when, now according to records from that DeSoto campground that were procured, that Roberta Laundrie calls on the 24th, the day after Brian leaves to go back to Utah to be with Gabby. She calls that campground and she makes a reservation for 2 people, September 1st through September 3rd. But on August 31st, okay, Roberta calls the campground and cancels that reservation. She doesn't make a new reservation either. So on the 31st, let's think about where Brian would be. Now that license plate reader caught the license plate of Gabby's van coming through, I believe it was 10:46 a.m. on September 1st. So did Brian call them on the 31st? Did he call them on the 30th? Did he call them on the 29th, the 27th, etc., etc.? What did the parents know on the 31st? What did Roberta know on the 31st when she called and canceled that reservation? Did she just find out he was on his way back and he had to talk to them? Was it something like that? Was there a call made to Roberta on the 31st, okay, that said, I'm on my way home, Mom. I've got to talk to you. Big things have happened. And she said, when will you be here? I'll be rolling in on September 1st, tomorrow. And did then Roberta say, oh boy, your dad and I have a camping trip. We're going to be gone. And did he say, you can't go, this is important? Whatever it was enough of a reason for Roberta to call the campground and cancel that trip. She doesn't reschedule the new trip. Not then. Okay? The license plate reader catches that van coming in on the morning of September 1st. We can glean that Roberta and Chris Laundrie knew their son would be arriving when they would be at the campsite. They canceled their plans to be there the 1st to the 3rd. She doesn't reschedule at the same time. She didn't reschedule a new camping trip until September 3rd. Okay, then Brian arriving on the 1st would be there, on his 3rd day back with them. On his 3rd day back with them, right, she calls that campground and she makes a reservation for 3 people. The date she reserves, September 6th through the 8th for 3. This was verified, via the registry at the campground, and surveillance footage was sent to the FBI. And that came about after Dog the Bounty Hunter started an independent search at the Florida campground. Now, did the FBI know about this before? Did they request that footage before? Did the Sheriff's Department have it and just turn it over? We'll know, we'll find out. But it does seem strange that this flurry of activity happened after Dog was there. Now, we mentioned this campground way back, and we mentioned it for the reason we looked at their DYRT, which is a camping website where people can have essentially their own little camping blog in that website, kind of like a, blogspot or WordPress.com, not org, but where you have, you just have a little free site in there, and you can talk with other campers, and you can write about your reviews and different things like that, and post photos. Well, we looked at that early on, and we saw this campground, and I actually said they should be looking there, and they should be looking on the Appalachian Trail. And then what happens? Dog comes out and starts talking about those areas. So did the FBI just take the parents' word, go to this reserve, which may have just been a wild goose chase? It'll all come out in the wash. It always does. That dirty laundry gets cleaned up, right? Pun intended. Anyway, so Dog now says 3 people checked into that campground on the 6th of September and 2 people checked out. But Stephen Bertolino says that's not true. Okay, Stephen Bertolino said, I will no longer give that dog credibility or dignify his false claims with the time of my reply. However, he did tell local media that the family camped out the 6th and the 7th, and that they all left the park on the 8th, all 3. Again, that proof is in the pudding. That surveillance footage is going to show exactly what happened. So let's talk about this. What do you think, looking at this? Did Brian call his parents from Wyoming? And if so, when do you think he called his parents that he was on his way home? Do you think he let them know that something happened with Gabby? What do you think they knew at that point? Something that causes Roberta to cancel the couple's camping trip from September 1st to the 3rd. Brian returns on the morning of the 1st. What did the parents know at that point? Okay. And when did they consult with attorney Stephen Bertolino? What happened on the 3rd that Roberta thinks it's a good time for the family to go camping on the 6th through the 8th? Okay, because that's 3 days with their son. What happened? At that time, do you think they knew that Gabby Petito was deceased? Do you think they knew where she was? Now we're going to talk about the purchase of that phone for Brian, the new phone, the one he opened up a new AT&T plan for. We're going to talk about that in just a second here. But that September 1st through the 6th, when they leave for that camping trip, that is almost a week to plan things out, right? Okay, and again, what we need to see is that FBI surveillance showing 3 people leaving the camp together. But that really doesn't tell us that, he returned back home to their house. No, it doesn't. Even if that surveillance shows that all 3 Laundries left together, that was before Gabby was reported missing. No one was looking at these 3 Laundries with a critical eye. So could the Laundrie parents have taken the little Laundrie somewhere else, right? When they left that park? If there's been speculation, we've said it too, that he could have stayed there. He could have had a kayak. They could have brought a kayak in. They could have brought an inflatable dinghy in. We don't know. A paddleboard, whatever. Something to let him get out through the water. But what if he didn't go out through the water? What if he didn't? What if they all left in the camper? What if that was their little meeting spot to talk about stuff? What if they used kayaks at the park, or rented kayaks, whatever, to drop certain things off different places, okay, to have a stash of things for their son? We don't know what could have happened. And we don't know what happened if that surveillance photo shows all 3 leaving the camping area. Remember, Gabby wasn't even reported missing at this time. No one was tailing them. After they pulled away from those cameras, they could have went anywhere, and they could have dropped their son anywhere, all right? Anywhere. We do know the police have said they did not see Brian on September 11th when they went to the house and they were directed to the attorney when Gabby was reported missing by her mother. So was Brian even at the house on September 11th? Was he even there on September 10th when there was the incident with Gabby's father, Joseph, which was a public service incident? And we don't know too much about that because almost everything is redacted from that. So let's go on. Now, in the recent days, some people that were camping came forward and they gave an interview with the news, and they said that they remember seeing Chris Laundrie's red truck with that camper top and that they were camping next to them. And they released a photo in which there's a person. It's not clear. It's quite blurry. Just may be Brian Laundrie in the background of that photo. They don't really remember anything else or suspicious or anything like that. And they're a couple from Florida. So a little more about this Florida couple. They were camping there the same time as the Laundries, allegedly. And they may have captured Brian on camera in that photo. It's Marcy Newsom of Fort Myers, along with her husband, Kenny. And they checked their photos and they found that photo of what may be Brian, may not, on Labor Day. That was on Labor Day. Okay. So if that was Brian, then they know that he was there in the park. But it still doesn't tell us what happens when they left, right? Now, other questions, right? Does law enforcement have any footage from the parking lot cameras at that reserve where they've spent so much time, energy, and resources searching, that Brian drove that Mustang there? Did they see him drive it there? Did they see him exit the vehicle? Did anybody other than the parents report seeing Brian there? Did cameras catch him going into the reserve? Anything like that. That would be really, really helpful. Has anything been found that would indicate Brian was there? Now, even if something is found, okay, let's say Brian's backpack. Does that mean Brian was there? No. Someone could have left it there, right? If they are truly trying to create this detour, this decoy for him, couldn't they have brought that Mustang there? Couldn't they have told them that he disappeared that day? Would they be, if they're going to do all of that, if they did, would they leave something of his in that reserve? Maybe his old phone. People are wondering where his old phone went. Did his old phone go into that reserve? And if it did, was it dropped there by him or his parents? Now listen, we know from that police stop that first he's saying he didn't have a phone. Then he pulls the phone out. And we thought, well, maybe he didn't have any minutes left. But that wasn't true because at the end he asked if he could just text Gabby something, right? So he obviously had a working phone. If he had a working phone and he knew that when he got back to Florida, oh crap, this can be tracked and everything, and what could he do? Well, we know that even without the phone, all of that stuff can be subpoenaed. So if it's all subpoenaed, it doesn't really matter whether he has the phone or not. But maybe he's thinking, okay, I got to get rid of that phone somehow, and maybe it can help me create an alibi, right? So perhaps using phone pings, they have tracked Brian's phone to that reserve, and we're talking about the original phone there. And that phone was then smashed to smithereens and thrown into one of those lakes, which may bring them to those lake searches they were doing yesterday. So that can all be part of the alibi and the ruse to get people to search in that reserve where he is not, allegedly. That's my belief, that he's not there. It's the belief of a lot of you. So keep them searching in that area because of phone pings and, because of the vehicle and because of what the parents say, and maybe that's their intelligence that they're saying are these phone pings. But does that necessarily mean he brought that phone there? No, not at all. It doesn't, and we know that. And is there any surveillance of the parents driving there or doing anything? We know they moved that Mustang back when they say they got a notification that that car needed to be moved. But they didn't report Brian missing until Friday, and they say he left on Tuesday the 14th to go there, and they were so worried about him and that he left his phone and his wallet at home. But we're going to talk about this phone that he left home because it wasn't the one he had. Let's talk about these phones. The lawyer issued a statement that said, "I can confirm that a phone was purchased on September 4th. Okay, let's see. So now we have a date of September 4th for the purchase of that phone, right? Roberta made the camping reservation on the 3rd, and they were going on the 6th or the 8th. That would fall in line with getting things in place, right? If that's what it was, because it's in that week time period, that September 1st when he returns through that 6th when they leave for the camping trip. So on the 4th, they have a phone purchase. And a new account for Brian opened with AT&T. Now this is good because did Brian have an Apple phone prior to this? Why did Brian have to open up a new account? Was Brian, there's something with that stop where he says he doesn't have a phone. Was that phone that he had not issued to him? What was the deal with that phone that he had there? Whose phone was that? Whose account was it? Why did Brian suddenly need a new phone and a new account with AT&T? Okay, and it goes on to say it's not a burner phone. And just because that this phone is not a burner phone doesn't mean he doesn't have a burner phone. Was this whole account created in another ruse? Okay, so here's his account and he left his phone. And yes, we got him a new phone because why? Because he lost his phone in Wyoming? Because he had a phone that he was buying minutes on? We don't know what the deal is there, but he gets this new AT&T account, right? And so he gets that on the 4th. Was he using that phone from the 4th through what time? He should, for all intents and purposes, be using it through the 13th, even the 14th, because they said he left it on the 14th. So they should have activity from him on that phone from the 4th through before he left on the 14th. And that will remain to be seen. But just because that was left behind doesn't mean that he doesn't have a burner phone out there. It doesn't mean that Roberta doesn't have a burner phone stashed somewhere outside of her home. It doesn't mean that the father doesn't have one. It doesn't mean the sister doesn't have one. It doesn't mean that his uncle or aunts or cousins or whatever have one. So yeah, that's interesting, the purchase, but it's also interesting that what about if there is a ping from his old phone that's causing them to search in that reserve, why in the world, if he got a new phone, would the pings be coming from an old phone? That would be screaming decoy, right? Or something? Okay. So yeah, there's a lot to that. Hey guys, I want to just say something that I told you about this last week, and a lot of you had said you had not heard this, and I mentioned it earlier in this video, but I just see now that it's being tweeted and it's kind of being reported as if it's brand new and not out there, but it was out there, that there was there were police called to the Laundrie home on September 10th, and that was because Gabby Petito's father was there, and it was described as that public service incident. And if you look at my timeline video from last week, you'll see that I do reference this there. Well, now this, and I told you that the police report is just almost entirely redacted. And well, now it's being tweeted out today as new news. But this was reported, and I don't know, a lot of people didn't pick it up. I don't know why. It was kind of, it was the day before Gabby was reported missing. So I just wanted to get that out there because I know that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, did you see this? Did you see this? Yes, it's in our timeline from last week. But it said problem settled. And again, it was like a public service incident is what it was put in there as. And we did report on this, but I just want to make sure that's in there. All right. Okay, so I just want to put these out here too. These came out today. They are about the police reports from the 11th. There were 3 different times that the police went to the Laundrie house. We knew about that. We didn't see these, but they're heavily redacted, and there's really nothing in them. They're completely redacted for all intents and purposes. But I'm just putting them out there. That was the day that Gabby Petito was reported missing by her mother. Now, there's also some shade that's being sent towards the Northport Police Department, and a lot of you feel that they made a lot of mistakes and that they lied to us and they said they knew exactly where he was and they didn't. And well, from Polk County Sheriff, who a lot of you like and admire, like myself, Sheriff Judd said that, you know, this wouldn't have happened. This wouldn't have happened if it was in his jurisdiction. So, you know, that's out there. We're going to put that out there. And today, you know, we have the updates. The FBI descended upon the house. They went in. It looked like they were carrying a little cooler type bag. You know, they had some like cardboard cartons on it, white. Someone's saying maybe they were DNA sample kits for the parents, maybe blood samples for the parents. There is a photo, and I'll show it over here, where they're collecting samples from the camper, and it's a specimen cup. People were thinking, oh, they're grabbing something from the toilet because it looks like a urine specimen cup, but they use those specimen cups for a lot of things. The male FBI agent went into the camper. He was in there. They collected something and they left. They also had a paper bag that was brought out quite full that they placed, you know, in their Bronco or Tahoe black and left after that. They weren't there a long time. Their lawyer issued a statement saying that they were only going to collect things with Brian's scent on them for tracking, for the canines to track and the search for Brian Laundrie, and that is it. There's nothing more to this, and blah, 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 blah. Of course he's going to say something like that. He's representing the family. And that is what we have. But, you know, I don't want to make this just into a timely update. I want to really ponder on these questions about the phone, about the scheduling of the camping trip, because those are going to be relevant as this moves forward. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Of course, we can discuss it the next time we're live, and I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.